shirt, but I do have a car shirt that I bought just for this show tonight because I'm doing the second in my series on cars. And this is what an extraordinary car. Boy howdy, this is a great one. If you went to the Paris International Auto Show in 1955, is it working? There we go. You would have seen the premiere of the Citroen DS, like the letters. But DS also means goddess. The car was called the Goddess. Now, this car doesn't look so unusual. Well, it might because they're not really commonly seen in America, but it looks a little bit more normal to us now. But back at that time, all cars were like this car that's on my shirt. They were boxy. All cars, except for sports cars, were boxy. This was the first sedan in the world that was designed by a aerospace engineer. And it took 20 years in secret to make this car. When it was debuted, people went absolutely berserk. So berserk that they sold 700 cars in the first 15 minutes of revealing it, and 12,000 cars in the first day. Now today I'm going to tell you why this car was voted not only by the leading designers of the world as the most beautiful car that was ever made, but it was also voted as the third most important car ever made after the Model T, the Mini, the original Mini, and followed by the VW Beetle. Now this car was mostly sold in France. 1.5 million units were sold, only 30,000 in the States. So a lot of Americans haven't seen this car. I had never seen one when I went to Germany when I was 15, but you see them there. And I said, gee whiz, that's a gorgeous car. So let me tell you something about the design, what's unusual about it. First of all, as I said, it was the first aerodynamically designed car. The sloping hood, nothing had ever been like that before in a sedan. At the front there was a very small grille. That had never been seen before. The windshield was very, very vertical. And at the end of the car, the back end of the car was 8 inches more narrow than the front. I mean, can you think of another car that's like that? I can't. Also, the lights, for the first time, they were put at the top. You see that now, but you didn't see that back then. Inside the car was kind of a revelation because when you look at it from the outside, it doesn't look like a particularly large car. It almost looks like a compact car. But inside, the seating was very vertical. It was extraordinarily comfortable. And so you actually had a lot of room. And the trunk, which it looks like an itty-bitty tiny thing, I've seen where they've raised up the trunk and 5 people get out. They might have been having a good time. You never know. But they were all in there. Now, also the steering wheel was rather odd looking. And you will see that when I show the pictures later. Now, what is the most spectacular thing about this car, though, is what's under the hood. The technicals on this car just absolutely blew cars out of the water. In fact, some of the technical innovations are either just now coming about in other cars or have never been duplicated. One, it was the first front-wheel drive mass-produced car. A whole decade before Detroit did it. That was a really big deal. It was the first car with power front disc brakes. What a big deal. The first car with power steering. I mean, the list keeps going on. It had the beginnings of automatic transmission. It was called a semi-automatic transmission where you did something, but it was much smoother than the regular, shift of the floor bit. The brakes were real unusual because they didn't have a pedal. It was like a mushroom thing that you pressed on. It was actually much ergonomically better. The French, you know, they do these things. Now, this is the last iteration of the car. The car was made from 55 to 75. And in 67, they did something that, oh my God, it's just freaky, amazing. And it was not allowed in America. They did not allow this. What they had in France were directional headlights, where the headlights, you turn the steering wheel, and it would go. So you would always have lights going where you're turning. There were a couple of cars in the 30s that had a single one. And only now is Audi getting around to it after, 2000. So 40 years later. But the big one, the one that I covet more than anything else in a car, and if you haven't heard of this, you too will be blown away because you also drive on Seattle streets. This car is the only car in the world that had hydro-pneumatic suspension. Now what is that? All other cars had coils for their shock absorbers. Every other car. This car used a combination of fluid and air. And so you get in this car and you turn on the engine and the car actually rose up about 3 or 4 inches. It was so incredible that you could drive across a parking lot with these, little barriers, between the. You could drive over this road at 25, 30 miles an hour, drink your coffee, and never spill anything. I mean, it was completely isolated. They have videos of the car driving down the highway on 3 wheels. You could actually raise the car up to change a tire. I mean, isn't that just sound amazing? Film companies, even today, are buying these cars from the 60s and 70s because they use them when filming horse racing and also in chase scenes in movies because it keeps the camera steady. Even Rolls Royces today can't really compete with what was in this car. Now, it was also one of the reasons why Americans didn't take to it, because it was a high-maintenance feature. It was high maintenance. In France, the roads were so crappy, they really needed it, because it hadn't really been renovated that much since the bombing. Wouldn't that be just amazing? I just really want one. Now, I'm going to show you this video, and what we're going to see in the video, the first video is a video, actually, of the directional headlamps. It's just freaky. And then you will see what a gorgeous car the Goddess is. So I'm going to get Joey to hit the button. And I picked special music for this that I think is appropriate. Isn't that beautiful? It's just... Isn't that wild? Now this is what the first car looked like. And they called it a frog. The nickname was a frog because it sort of looked like a frog. And not so much with this, but with the single headlamps. You don't really even need... The only chrome is right here, pretty much. I think it's the most beautiful rear end of the car. Probably. That's the dash. I liked the later dashes. The earlier dashes I'm not so crazy about. But see the steering wheel, how odd it is? That's this convertible. Wow.
Where are you moving?
I need one. Look at that level of lines. Look at the little thing. That just really sings me. I want to ask, how many of you were familiar with the Citroen car? How many of you knew about all of the technicalities of it?
The suspension, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing car. I saw one today that was a station wagon. It wasn't that pretty because it messed up the lines. And I saw this old geezer going in, and I don't think he could hear me. I was saying, stop, because I wanted to talk to him about his car. But you see every now and then one in Seattle. There used to be a dealership here. And I had a friend of mine at the other club that the dealer lived next door and would give him a drive it. And he said, you just couldn't believe the ride. Just amazing. So thank you so much. And I enjoyed sharing with you one of my passions.